You are listening to Mr. Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Mr. Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. After what seems like an eternity, the Marc win streak is finally over. But the Marquez streak is still going, as it was younger brother Alex who finally got one over his older brother to deny him a championship match point at Misano. As ever, I am your host Kyle Power, and today I am joined in the virtual shed by some fellow MotoGP enthusiasts. It's our lovable co-host Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
What's up, Kyle? Let's get this show going, because I think we have a lot of things we could talk about. Probably won't fit, so let's get it on the road.
Absolutely. We never fit everything in. And talking about fitting everything in, we always fit in the tyre-obsessed trumpeter, Matt. Trumpets. How's it going, mate?
My kingdom for a track that has way more right turns than left.
Absolutely, and that's why Marc doesn't like it. So, into the weekend overview then, coming in. Maverick returns from his injuries a little bit fitter. Aleix returns for his delayed wild card at his home round, but he's still a little bit poorly. Somkat Chantra returns from his injury, so it's a trio of returns. And returning into mainstream media and motorsport, Günther Steiner crops up from seemingly nowhere leading a consortium to buy Tech 3, so it's quite good to see Günther back. And Lorenzo Salvadori is having a wild card on the Aprilia, and there's a few notable contract signings. So Jack Miller, I'm very happy to announce, has signed to stay with the Pramac Yamaha. Luca Marini has re-signed with the Honda, as has Johann Zarco. So we got a lot of things. I think the rider market is pretty much sorted now. One thing that's almost sorted is the championship standings, with Marc Marquez a whopping 175-point lead, and a lot of talk going into this weekend that he could have a match point in Misano. I think he needed to score 10 points more than his brother Alex over the weekend. Huge lead. Bagnaia struggling to hold on to third from Marco Bezzecchi, rapidly closing in, and there's a great little battle behind of Acosta, Morbidelli and Di Gianantonio. I can never say his name. So, on to practice then, Jules, and we had quite a lot of discussion before this weekend started about silver bullets and whatnot, but Bagnaia instantly on the back foot.
Yeah, I felt like a fool when I was at work on the Friday for FP1, and then you texted me with the standings, and I knew I kind of knew this must be the result looking at the time, but I wishfully texted you back like, so is it still going? Is there still time left? But there wasn't, and yeah. I mean, I really wanted the silver bullet to be real, despite I think a lot of things pointed towards the other direction, and it clearly didn't. And I don't know why, because the title fight is over, but I just desperately want the title fights we had in the last couple of seasons, and we were spoiled. And then also Jorge Martin, I kind of expected him to do better this weekend at the track where he clinched his title last season, but it all wasn't happening. So I was happy to see that it wasn't actually either Marquez topping the timesheets on the Friday.
Well, I'm just going to go with the metaphorical silver bullet, because I think what he found in practice was that you can occasionally get really lucky, but at the end of the day, you've got to stop changing everything all the time. And you've got to do the work. And it seems like across the weekend, I know I'm foreshadowing a little bit, he may have finally turned the page on chasing whatever phantom he's been chasing this whole season, and is actually going to start getting to grips with the bike that he has in front of him.
Okay, well, we can discuss him a bit later, but we've heard this so many times now, and this silver bullet has kind of turned into a bronze toothpick, really, hasn't it? It's not. I mean, we keep hearing him saying this. So he wasn't looking great at all in practice. 23rd, I think, in FP1, and didn't make it through to Q2 and didn't look like close at any point whatsoever. Binder surprise fastest, amazing. So going Agura through as well was notable, who was really good, and the KTM's looking super fast as well. So this is great. Also Fabio Quartararo in the mix. So on to quali. Obviously Bagnaia missing out 21st on the grid, Jules, but did you manage to get through on the GP25?
Yeah, it was actually a heavy loaded Q1 session with Digi, Pecco, of course, Jorge Martin, Bezzecchi, who had been so wonderful in the last couple of races. He struggled, so both Aprilias. So yeah, it was far-fetched for Bagnaia to go through, given his Friday, and so it was Digi, and who went through with him?
Fabio, it was Quartararo. I think I lied there. I said Quartararo went straight through to Q2, but it wasn't. He was actually P11, I remember, in practice. So it was Digi and Quartararo, I think, who came through Q1, got into Q2.
Maybe Binder. Oh well.
No, it was Quartararo. I think it was Quartararo, unless my notes are completely wrong.
Yeah, well, could well be. So it was a loaded Q1 and then a proper Q2, and given the three KTM's or at least two of them, being so strong on Friday, I kind of had my hopes up for Acosta to snatch pole, because I would love to see a race where he leads out of turn one and see what happens then. But it didn't really turn out that way. But I thought three different bikes on the front row, that was a good thing to look forward to for the sprint and the Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Acosta has said this a few times, saying, like, if I could just sort qualifying out and get away, I'd be really, really strong. But somebody who was really strong is Alex. He's been super quick here. So a new lap record for Alex to snatch pole. Quartararo, a very surprise second, which is amazing, coming through Q1. And we've seen this before. I think, was it Matt, you mentioned previously that almost coming through Q1 can almost be an advantage, I think. Marc Marquez getting on the front row, but only being towed around by his brother, really. He wasn't. He was looking on the back foot. Morbidelli 4th, Acosta 5th, and Digi getting up into 6th, which is really, really good. But, so Marc not looking strong, and Matt, it sets up a really good prospect.
Because despite the fact that the surface at Barcelona is sort of known for giving tires a hard time, it's also apparently very renowned for having kind of low grip. So it's not surprising at all to see that extra practice time paying off for people who had to go through it. And, and couldn't ask for more in terms of the first two rows of the grid. Mixed up, a lot of things. And, the thing that struck me, and if you mentioned it, I apologize, Honda kind of surprised me with their...
No, didn't mention them at all.
With their consistency from a track that we knew to be very one-off and unique in Hungary, to come here and continue to be in the mix is a demonstration that their chassis, swing arm, and electronics upgrades are for real, because this is one of the most benchmark tracks that they probably race on.
Yeah, that is a great point, because again, it's Marini, isn't it? Been looking really, really strong and really good. Zarco was fast all weekend, looking really, really quick up there. So yeah, you're right to mention Honda. I hadn't mentioned them at all. But let's see how they go during the sprint. Okay, so on to the sprint then, and Jules, that first lap. Fabio Quartararo versus Marc Marquez and Acosta. Oh, I bet you who are you cheering for in that? I wonder who.
Well, with the risk of coming out of this podcast as a anti-Marc Marquez guy more and more, that, trust me, listeners, that's not the case. I just love fights and excitement and tight battles. And I thought it was mouth-watering. The way that Fabio took the battle took to battle with Mark and not having any of it. And we all know, of course, after a couple of laps, the Yamaha has to let go, and that's that. But still, the how feisty Fabio was, how eager and hungry to not give up that position just like that. It just made me think. Just imagine Yamaha gets that V4 right. They're gonna race it with a wild card next weekend at Misano, and expectations aren't that high, and I think that's just fair. I mean, if who comes up with a brand new engine and hits the deck right away, but just imagine they kind of get it right, and maybe Fabio can race it sometime or maybe even a couple of times still this season. I mean, why not? And have him on a competitive bike. I mean, just imagine that for next season, and I'd really, really love that.
Do you mean the bike and the engine that they tested this very same day we're recording? Because did they not run it in a test at Barcelona?
You are
did
right.
not know that.
Fabio's getting his first flavour of it today, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think the bad news, keeping up with the tea leaves a little bit, is the weather was not particularly receptive. I think it was a little bit rainy and overcast. So times are not really being discussed. But if I'm understanding it correctly, and you have a lot more experience, is that the big improvement here isn't just going to be the power unit itself, but also the effect on the handling dynamics of the bike as well.
Yeah, packaging as well. So it's essentially it's not across the frame inline 4. It'd be a V4, so it's actually a narrower engine, and of course the weight distribution would be different, so the bike can actually be narrower. Although the Yamaha always looks like quite a slight bike compared to all the other ones, but it's so Yamaha haven't just sort of conjured up a new engine and chucked a new engine in the chassis. Like as Jules rightfully says, who hits the ground running with like an engine, Matt? So but they've come up with an engine pretty quickly, but they need to redesign a completely new motorcycle.
So the suspension, everything else that goes along with it. But the thing that you said immediately, when you said the Yamaha already looks slight and it's an across the frame mount currently, is I think, okay, well, if we're talking packaging, then what that also impacts very much is cooling. I'm imagining there's probably got to be like a 30-40% increase in ability to cool by occupying a smaller footprint within the frame and the chassis than their current motor. Although I don't know. That's just we call them wags, a wild guess, as it were. But immediately I think, wow, that could be revolutionary for the cooling. And as we all know, the better you cool the engine, the more power it produces for longer.
Absolutely. And I think Jules is completely right. It was amazing watching Fabio, and we want to see him on this bike. Because that first lap battle, the way he just threw it back over the front going into turn 2 and is so aggressive. And we know he's going to slip back, but he just absolutely just doesn't care. And in previous eras before the Mark injury and he went away, when Fabio was coming into the championship for the first time, his first couple of seasons, he had some epic battles with Mark, and really want to see these two fighting, and they fight really, 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 really hard. So it was really good to see. But yeah, Jules, he was always on borrowed time.
Yeah, and we've seen it this season quite a few times. I was actually pretty surprised to see Fabio up there, because Yamaha had a horrible weekend at the Hungarian Grand Prix. But it just shows also when you looked at where the other Yamahas were this weekend, that wasn't great either. But it just shows that even looking far off on a Friday, on the Saturday, on the one lap pace, Quartararo is just, he's, I don't know, maybe the best at squeaking out a one lap pace. And it just makes you very, very curious to see what he could do if Yamaha can get it right. But yeah, it was just waiting for him to drop back and have the brothers up front fighting for the victory on the Saturday.
And it happened almost immediately going on to lap 2. So after he muscled Mark out, there was contact. Mark initially tries to cut the inside, doesn't he? Clips him, like almost punts like Quartararo wide. And Quartararo's like, nah, mate, not today. And just shoves him back. And then Acosta, who we've seen there's a little needle between Acosta and Mark. And on a little side tangent as well, we're going to go here. I think Acosta, everyone was saying that was nice in the press conference going into the weekend. Acosta was giving Mark some praise, saying he's almost into legends. I actually think the opposite. I think that was one of the most backhanded compliments I've ever heard. He was like, if Mark wins this season, he'll almost be as good as, was it Michael Jordan or Fernando Alonso? Fernando Alonso saying he'll be in like legends. I was like, oh, get real.
I'm sorry, British bias, that's Spanish bias.
Yeah,
I mean, Alonso, whatever. No one's going to deny the talent is there, but I think there are other Formula. If I was going to drag Formula One into a MotoGP comparison and Marquez, I don't think it would be Alonso that I'd choose.
No, exactly. And Mark just clears him by orders of magnitude already in like legend status. So I actually think, Akko, that was an intentional like backhanded compliment and a bit of a dig at Mark already, showing like a lack of respect, which is funny. But that's just me with my tin foil on. And he showed a lack of respect as he went straight through and pushed Mark out into third. But going down into lap 2, the power of the Ducati and the KTM just blatted past poor Quartararo, who was just a sitting duck. And Mark gets them both and gets out in the front. And yeah, as we see, Jules, then the two brothers were out in front. But Alex, it was true. The practice pace was true, wasn't it? He had the measure of Mark.
Yeah, during the Friday and the Saturday qualifying, you never really felt Mark had the reserve like he has been ever since, I don't know, even before the summer break. Like, you feel like he's on 80-90%, and it never felt like that this weekend, that he had something in hand. And it was discussed broadly, elaborately before the weekend, that this is more of an Alex circuit. Mark had never really shown what he's capable of on this track, and blah blah blah, the last two corners right-handers. But you gotta hand it to Alex. He took this opportunity and started showing that he was still the rider that he was in, let's say, the first quarter of the season, although it seeed that way. Because right when you were thinking, well done, Alex, at that exact point, you saw him, or you saw a Greasy had gone down, and at first you thought, it must be Aldeguer, because it just wouldn't really spring into your mind immediately that would be Alex, because he was so comfortable, but he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aldeguer had already taken Bezzecchi out, Matt. Yeah. So we can have a game of whose fault is it? Whose fault was it?
I mean, it was Aldeguer, and the thing that I will immediately hand to him is, unlike many other times, it was straight up over to make sure to check on him, because he knew it was a mistake he owned immediately, but also the way he came into the side of the Aprilia, he was genuinely concerned, and that is. You get that maybe a little bit more in MotoGP than possibly other classes. Because everybody is at such risk out there.
Well, other forms of motorsport, I think in all classes of sort of motorcycle racing in general, there's just camaraderie, because they just know, they are putting their lives on the line. Totes to Bez though, Jules. Like he was pretty cool about it in the end.
Yeah, I think he was in a bit of a shock at first, because he really felt his left arm, I think it was, and I sat at home and I was really hoping, like, don't let this be serious, because he had been going so well lately, but then I think it was a racing incident. I mean, it's a good overtaking spot. There was room to do it. These things can happen. And I also think in a sprint race, it feels different than in the Sunday race. I think they make less of a thing about it. Can I say one thing about the Alex crash, though?
Yeah, go
It
for it.
really, really reminded me of the GP24 crashes Jorge Martin and Bagnaia had last season quite a bit, when they were, so comfortably in the lead. Actually, Pecco had the exact same thing last season in the sprint at Barcelona, but then it was really the final lap.
On the final lap.
Yeah. And Alex afterwards also said, like, there was nothing going on, and just there it went. And you used to hear Martin and Bagnaia say, like, yeah, the bike is too good, like there's too much grip, and
getting too cocky with it.
Yeah, and so it really reminded me of those crashes on the same bike.
Well, that's it. I'm stealing your podium picks now, Jules. Stealing my point from me. Mark made an interesting comment about that. He said that maybe because he had, I think Alex had reached a point where he was going into what you might call maintenance mode, where instead of being 100%, you're about 90%. You give yourself some more margin. You give yourself some management parameters on your fuel, on your tire. And he said maybe just the balance of the bike changed because he suddenly was just that little bit slower, which means that when I get on the brakes, there's not as much transfer to the front, which means it has slightly less grip. And also because I'm braking from a slower speed, it's a little bit harder to nail that same entry point that I've really got grooved. And then you're a little bit wide. You don't have quite as much on the front. And it just says, oh, you know what? I think we'll take a nap. And so yeah, I think you're right to point out that problem happening in 24 every time they were in that mode. And that might be like sort of a little weakness of the bike that we just, hadn't really picked up on. Only the really clever people did.
Yeah, I think Jules is right. Yeah, said, look, the bike is almost too good, can lull them into a false sense of security. Interesting, Mark had said he'd already given up. Alex had got like the gap over to 1 second, he said, and probably rolled it off. I think Alex said he just maybe got a bit too confident or just relaxed too much, and you're exactly right. We've seen this in loads of forms of motorsport. I've done it myself in real life as well, where you're kind of cruising a little bit, and because you're not on the absolute ragged edge, you go onto autopilot, maybe sort of zone out a little bit, and bang, you're on the floor. So really unfortunate to see that, because Mark had given up. He was thoroughly beaten. Alex had just handed it to Mark to go down. But someone else also went down was Jorge Martin, got Morbidelli'd. Now we saw as well with got harpooned in there again. And the Morbidelli crash, we're talking about sort of a comparing crashes. This reminds me of the Jorge Lorenzo on the Honda a few years ago, where he skittled loads of people out and took Rossi out and everything. I don't know if people remember that crash. That's when it was a horrible hairpin down there. But Jules, old Frankie's up to his old tricks again.
Yeah, and just I think this was the week where his contract extension was announced, and
I missed that.
Yeah, the comments online, I mean, of course, they are almost always toxic nowadays, but not a lot of people understood this extension, and I think there's something to be said about it. And that may be something for a discussion in a different show. But yeah, it's the how many times has Franco done this season, Frankie? It's it's almost like he's doing this on purpose now. He's more pretty often in the last couple of races taken riders out from the back, from behind, and it must be so frustrating. And I don't know what it is. And it doesn't even matter if he gets long laps or gets penalties. It just happens to him, and it's a shame, because it's really nice guy in interviews, but this is
that's
not
the thing. That's the contrast, isn't it? He seems like such a nice guy, and then like Matt, he just puts a helmet on and turns into a demon.
Well, yeah, he turns into a demon, and honestly, that lap had me wondering what exactly Aprilia had done to someone in a former life, because both of their riders getting taken out in the same lap on the factory bikes was just, I don't know. I'm sure it happens, but wow, at opposite ends of the field too. And I don't know, like his interview afterwards, he's like, he was really frustrated with himself because he's like, this is not, this was neither of our plans. He clearly had more pace in the bike. So I do wonder, I think you've mentioned in the past, like he had some fairly serious crash injuries. I wonder if this is just sort of long-term trying to put himself and his riding back together, or if there's just something about the particular bike he's on and the way it's set up that just that he lacks the resolution to catch before it's gone too far.
Yeah, he could also just be very, very unlucky, and it's just all coincidental as well. He is quite an aggressive rider. I think he's quite aggressive on the front end, and he was trying to move in Frankie's defence, because we've slammed him a little bit. Slippery track. He was trying a hard move, trying to outbrake Jorge Martin, who's very, very late on the brakes anyway, on the Aprilia that's got great entry speed. He's just made a mistake. We've seen loads of people do it. Just unfortunately, I think, Frankie is prone to making these sorts of mistakes, and I don't think he's afraid to go for a risky move. And I think he will go for more risky moves than most people would, and that's when tiny mistake, punishment doesn't really fit the crime. So harsh for Martin. I did quite enjoy his slow, sarcastic round of applause as he was getting up in the gravel towards it. It was all right. So that was quite interesting. But what was interesting was Marc Marquez coming through to win, but behind we retreated, and we'll talk about it a bit in our KTM feature later, but the 4th, 5th and 6th battle, the KTM battle, we had Bastianini, Acosta and Binder, 3 headbangers, all going at it tooth and nail, Jules.
What I really appreciated was that TV direction showed us this. We had the Marquez brothers up front, but this was just really, really interesting to see how they almost synchronically, simultaneously moved around the track and trying to get the better of each other. It was not only good to see that KTM was competitive on this track as well, where, for instance, Aprilia couldn't get it together this time, but it was a really good fight. And 3 guys going for it, and it didn't matter if one was on the factory bike and the other was on the Tech 3 bike. It was just good to see three proper races, and Bastianini, who we'll talk about in a bit later, I reckon, really showing strong pace. So it was good, and as opposed to the Sunday race, I would like to say, because then we got shown a lot of Alex Marquez up front, while the Aprilias and the track houses were battling there, and then the group of Marini, Ogura, Bagnaia, etc. But the Saturday race sprint, I thought was really, really directed well for the TV viewers.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt.
I think KTM saved the weekend in a lot of ways. Being 3 very talented riders on a bike that was, because they were all on the same exact manufacturer's power unit and fighting, made it exceptionally difficult for anyone to really get away with anything in the way that you might against a bike with different characteristics. It was a sheer delight to watch a sprint where, and they just raced each other. They had no fear of consequences, which is one of the delightful things about MotoGP riders that most of the rest of the population does not share.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the comms sort of pointed out, the 3 completely different styles. They're all extremely aggressive. And who was it mentioned at the end? Was it Acosta mentioned? Because it was like a Red Bull Rookies Cup race. They were just there was no consequences. They all had a great time, and they were putting hard moves on each other. And it was just completely, it's so funny to see pretty much 3 identical bikes, because even though the Tech 3 team, they're essentially factory bikes as well. So pretty much 3 identical bikes with 3 totally contrasting styles and strong at different bits. It was so good to watch. And great point, Jules, about the direction. That was, absolutely brilliant. I was getting a bit frustrated on the Sunday, wanting to see some of the fights back down the field. So Mark ends up winning them, comes across, we've hardly spoken about it, but Quartararo get an amazing second and just held it there as absolutely brilliant. And a bit of a stealth Digin Antonio, I got his name right, Digin Antonio twice, came in absolute stealth third on the GP25. Amazing result for him, looking really, really strong. So this Acosta ended up winning that KTM battle in fourth, Bastianini fifth, with Binder in sixth. It was lovely to see Binder back up in the top and fighting. It was great because he has had a shocking year. But the shocking thing was Alex returning to being Alex Marquez again after we give him so much praise and throwing it down the road. But it left a really good prospect for the Grand Prix. So, on to the Grand Prix review then, and our opening topic, as we like to split these down to topics. It's amazing, Alex. We have to give Alex the lead topic, and I don't think we've hardly done that this year. I think we did in Jerez when he beat it, but this is the first time, Jules, I think he has actually beaten Mark in a straight-out fight in a Grand Prix, ever.
Yeah, and in what fashion? He didn't lead the race from start on. He had to overtake him. I think it was on lap 4 already.
Which is something I think you never thought you'd ever see.
Well, I was happy to witness this, and I thought he did it in a very convincing way. Not like, okay, do you mind if I stick my bike here now? Is that okay with you? He just went for it, and I think that came from that he was very confident from how he performed in the earlier bits of the weekend, that he really had the better of his brother on this track, and I think that did something for his mindset. Thinking, but I can probably beat him. I can beat him on merit. So he went for it, and I think he never really left room for any doubt if he deserved this win. Must say, I don't want to take anything away from Alex. After the race, I felt like there was no way he was gifted anything, and then Mark afterwards kind of had these remarks like, don't do anything stupid and ride sensibly. But I think he really didn't have the better of Alex yesterday, because I think it was 2 or maybe 3 laps from the finish where Mark seemed to, close that gap and go for it, and he went wide, I think turn 10. And you saw a shot of the Ducati garage kind of gesturing like, okay, cut the fight, And so, hats off to Alex. I mean, he really showed that he was boss this weekend.
And I think that pass, and this is something that I love, because if anything was clear across the weekend, it was that for all we've been lobbing softballs about, well, how hard are they really going to race each other? Well, turns out, pretty hard. As hard as any other 2 racers are going to race each other. So fair. They finally listened to our show and decided to answer the question. Thank you very much. The other thing I'm going to say, and this is something that I would love to lay claim to thinking of on my own, but if I'm not mistaken, this is like the first proper dry race 1-2 that Mark has lost to a competitor, because in Le Mans it was wet, and he was like, I'm going to stay on the bike. This was a flat out dry race, no excuses, ding dong battle, if I can steal that phrase, between the 2 of them, and the overtake. Right, left, right, really encompasses why Mark, and this is post-injury Mark, pre-injury Mark might have been a different story. I don't know. That's before my time in MotoGP. But Alex knew he was faster all weekend. Mark knew he was faster. Ducati knew he was faster. Was it Gigi or David basically said, look, Mark, you're going to accept second sometimes because you're not going to be the fastest at every track. And I don't think it's absolutely no surprise that he got that little piece of wisdom coming into this specific track. So Alex stepped up to the plate, to use an Americanism there and bring in yet another sport. And just, he really just smashed it all the way. And it was a delight to see, because it was a real fight. And Jules is right, man. He got to lap 20 or 21. He's like, oh, I'm just going to go 8/10 faster. And you say he went wide. No. If you look at what happened to Mark chasing him, he fully lost to the rear. It was up in the air and almost sideways on him. He very nearly took himself out trying to match his brother's pace. And he said after the race, I had to remind myself that, no, this is not how you win a championship. And I can't chase a time I can't achieve on this bike.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we see that, and we saw it in the did we see it in the sprint as well? Mark had tucked the front as well, so he was on the limit in both races, and I think he tucked the front during the Grand Prix as well. Like he didn't give it to him. I think he was like happy it was his brother that beat him, but like I think he was thoroughly and fair and square beaten. Now, that's a great point you make about the first time he's been beaten in a dry race this year. I think you are correct, because when was he beaten? Kota, when he binned it in the wet from the lead. Jerez, when he binned it from third. And Silverstone sprint, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, Silverstone was the dry, that weird one. He was actually beaten by Bez, wasn't he? But the third, but he wasn't. He was third, wasn't he? Or fourth in Silverstone. That was when the GP25, the Ducatis,
something was funky about that. Did he have to get on a second bike or something like that?
Yeah,
like it seems like there was some
red flag
factor. Yeah.
But in a straight out 1-2 sort of fight, this is the first time he has got the better of him, and I think it might be the first time ever that Alex has got one up on his older brother and actually got the better of him, and it was brilliant. Absolutely great to see. You can't take anything away from him. And your great mention, I was going to mention that later, I think it was DG or Tadotsi said, and Mark mentioned this about like the little pearl of wisdom of just like, it's going to happen. It is going to happen at some point. And yeah, so Alex, amazing. Let's talk about Mark a little bit. And so, yeah, we're saying super, super sensible, a 15 race win streak if you count all the sprints and Grand Prix, epic. And it's P2. You know, it's not like he crashed out or anything. Like P2, absolutely amazing. And on a track that he, inverted commas, hates. I think he said, because if this wasn't my home Grand Prix, because his town is very, very close. My partner's town, I'm actually going to be there on Friday this week, is next to, is right next to the track. Is Montmello, it's like the next town down, and the Marquez is like the next town from that. So home Grand Prix for them. And Mark hates his track, too many fast right-handers. And let's not forget that Alex was so quick in the post-season test here last year when he jumped on the GP24. He dominated that test. So yeah, Mark played it sensible for once. He knows the championship's pretty much his. But what this did do was deny Mark a chance to wrap it up at Misano, which would have been, well, an insult to his teammate and some of his detractors in their backyard of doing it. But it looks like it's probably going to happen in Japan. I mean, if you're going to have a party, I think you'd rather it happened in Misano, Jules, than in Japan.
Yeah, I think Mark isn't losing any sleep over extending the season a bit regarding when he takes the title. I mean, he clearly desperately wants to win this title because it means so much to him after everything that's happened. That's we discussed that multiple times, but I can't escape the feeling that it matters to him that he can celebrate it the way he wants it, and that's probably full throttle celebrations. I mean, we know what he's like with that, and I imagine you just can't do that on Misano turf. That's just too sensitive, and you don't want people booing your party or whatever.
I don't know. I think he'd rub their nose. Like, I think he'd lap the booze up. He did it. Remember at Mugello, he was given the earshot. He was like, let me hear you, come in, because it's ridiculous the hate that he gets there, and it still runs deep. But Matt, I think he'll actually play to it if it did happen in Misano.
I mean, if you're there and that happens, then those boos are essentially a form of respect now, aren't they? Yeah, because you have walked into somebody else's house, you've sat down at their table, you've eaten their food, you've slept in their bed, you've messed up their bathroom, and then you've just given a wave and cleaned none of it up and gone off on your own merry way. But that's a fanciful way of putting it, the way that people who are probably hardcore loyalists to Ducati and to Bagnaia, but that's what it feels like to them. But if you're the person who does it, you're like, well, this is essentially, you're validating, the skills that I brought here and the reason I was brought here, which is to take this bike and win as much and as often as is possible. And so, yeah, now you just take that as a measure of respect that you're so good that you can garner that sort of a response.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. So so Jules, it's going to be extended a little bit more. It might happen in Japan. So I'm a bit worried. I want to watch it live when it happens, but if I don't want to get up in the morning and then watch it on the rerun, not that it really matters, but it might not happen in Japan. Do you think Alex can keep this performance up? And if Alex can then beat Mark again next weekend, we might be rolling home past Japan.
Let's not get carried away. I mean, let's not forget Alex did Alex things on Saturday, and he restored himself on Sunday, and that was great. But if it was going to happen anywhere, it was at this track. And I think for the rest of the season, we pretty much saw Mark can do with Alex whatever he wants and when he wants it. So I don't think Mark wants to drag this on too long, and I think he will be glad when he's really secured this. So no, I think if you look at Alex's form since not maybe halfway down the season, maybe a bit earlier.
Since the injury, isn't it? Maybe.
Yeah, but it was actually the Alex that from what he got that injury at Assen, being impatient, immediately wanting to strike back, not taking things a bit more patience, not riding with his head. I think I think the signs of all the weekend since then point towards this was great. This was a great Sunday for Alex, but he's not suddenly going to get the better of Mark in the flyaway races.
What I love about this most is I'm certain every single journalist out there saying he could win in Misano if he wins in Barcelona could not do any of the math and tell you, well, what exactly, someone's going to do it for them and they're going to be spouting it off at the next race. Like, well, now he has to have this many points over his brother by such and such a time. And no one bothered to lay that out. So is it inevitable? Well, yes, of course it is. Is it going to happen at Misano? Now we know mathematically it can't, thank you. But it will probably happen in the next couple of races for sure. And the thing about Alex is you're focused on Alex, but there are other competitors out there, and there's always the possibility that what happened to Aprilia could happen to Ducati at these races. But I know from Mark's point of view, it's essentially a done deal. And the sooner he can put a bow on it, the sooner they can start thinking about next season. And he seems to be motivated very much to be thinking about that with the engineers.
Absolutely. Well, Mark might want to put a bow on this season, but I think his teammate Pecco would want to strap a lead weight to it and throw it in the sea because he has had enough. I think he wants to see the end of this season. Jules, Pecco, silver bullets, WTF. What a shocking weekend.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. I think Matt said it right earlier in this episode that, constantly making changes to the bike, to the setup, trying to change that bike to suit you. It proved again that that's not going to work for him with this bike. Starting the weekend, he said that they had made position changes over 2 centimeters, which is pretty big. Didn't really specify what bits or parts, but it was huge, and it just didn't work. And we discussed this Friday, Saturday sprint and qualifying was awful. Just imagine what must be going on in his head. And then they on the Sunday they changed his swing arm, and they changed it to the spec that Mark and Digi have been using for most of this season.
So he wasn't running it already, like.
No,
Yep.
if you look at Pecco's GP25, he runs the GP24 Aero, while Mark and Digi have been running the GP25 Aero package for I think from Jerez on, something like that. So he kept trying to stay as close to the GP24 with the GP25 bike as he could, and it clearly didn't work. So he decided to, or maybe Ducati just said, enough is enough. You're gonna run the GP25 like it is now. Gave him that swing arm.
So I'm curious. Vegetables.
Yeah, and I'm curious if they're gonna switch him to that Aero package as well. But anyway, and it made things better. And the one thing, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from him, but on the other hand, he finished P7. He was P12 after lap 1, so in during the start somehow he made up a lot of places. Then
there was that crash, wasn't there? So I think it was rider's misfortune. He did make a good start, though, to be fair to him.
Yeah, he did make a good start. He was right behind Bezzecchi, Morbidelli going down in T1, and then Digi responding to it. Morbidelli didn't go down, but he touched Bezzecchi. Digi went down, so he avoided that. He overtook Morbidelli in the aftermath of that. That gave him P8, and the only reason he gained one place was because Zarco crashed. So, position-wise, a lot of improvement, but did he really show any real? He was
Did
still.
Did he show improvement, Matt? Did he?
Okay. So here we go. This is my take. Outlier setups can work at specific tracks. And I think this is what he found. But they tend to only work at specific tracks. And there's a reason 99 times out of 100, even when the software finds them and says, oh, this theoretically delivers you a better thing. Yeah, well, it usually doesn't, And I think this was either Ducati simply gave him enough rope, as we used to say, to hang himself till he was forced to admit that, yeah, okay, you're right. That if these solutions will be magic, I can't count on them. I never know when they're going to show up, and they don't last. Therefore, I will accept what you are offering me here, which is screw the new parts onto the bike and see what it feels like, and let's go from there.
Yeah, like, you can, from an engineering point of view, Ducati must be getting a bit annoyed with it. Like, come on, we're making all these new parts. The other riders are taking it. They don't want to regress. They don't want to go back. As engineers, you always want to push it forward. I mean, DG loves his bikes and loves his progression and stuff like that. So he's becoming under more and more pressure for it, Matt.
Yeah, he is. And this is why I'm glad to talk about, did he make progress? Big picture-wise, absolutely. As far as the race goes, when was the last time we saw him overtake anybody in a race, especially near the end and in the top 10, which I think he must have he had at least one or two overtakes that I recall near the end of the Grand Prix, moving up from like 12th to 7th or wherever he finished. It wasn't just riders crashing out, or 12th to 8th.
He was also being overtaken. Agura nailed him. He's being overtaken by...
we're saving that for later. We're going to have a big battle about this.
But still, so I don't think it's that positive, really, for Pecco.
It's tire management. You could see, like, when they showed the shot of him looking backwards at Agura, you could see how ragged his tire was. He's still not he's not optimizing the use of the tires. He's using them as crutches for the feel and to make up for his inability to brake in the way that he's used to.
Yeah,
but now he's on a bike that everybody else is using, right? Now the engineers can start working with him, and forward progress is a real potential here. I'm not going to guarantee it because goodness knows how wrong have I been about that all season, but
Well, yeah, how many times have we heard it? And he himself now has said at the end of it, he's now being cautious. He's not going to say there's any more silver bullets or anything coming. He's now going to be a little bit cautious with it. So I think we need to be a little bit cautious with time, because as usual, we've rambled on far too long. But let's get on to our next subject then. And that is the Beast returns. Again, we think he could have been on the podium in Hungary and end up having a shocker courtesy of Fabio Quartararo in turn one, which ruined his weekend essentially. But his first podium for KTM, absolutely mega. That crazy battle that he has, and from the utter despair of the pre-season and the first few rounds, Matt, he was absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, he was. He was and it was to the point where you begin, because, he had his struggles with the Ducati as well because of his basic riding style, where you'd be like, he's nowhere. And then he'd come up at the end because he had so much tire left. I don't think he could just ride the bike as aggressively as it needed to be ridden to really get the tire immediately into the window. And you go to KTM and you're like, he's anonymous. Why does everyone say, oh, the Beast, oh, he's my favorite? You just, as someone new to the sport, you're like, really? Why? Oh, well, now I do know why. Absolutely, after watching the last two races. And I love this. I love this for him because he is the antidote to the Bagnaia story. He was anonymous. He went with it. He worked with them. It's taken him how many races, how much of the season? But redemption, my friends, is at hand in battle, and Bastianini claimed it this weekend.
Yeah, Bastian. He kind of came forward just saying like that he had to un-Ducati himself, changing the way he was used to race a bike. And with that, the improvements that KTM obviously have made chassis-wise, aero package-wise since Austria, I think, it has worked for all of them. And it's almost a bit of a shame that Maverick Vinales can't really profit from this as well. This time probably will come, but it's just really, really nice to see Bastianini do this, because it's easy to forget. But in the second half of last season, on teammating Pecco Bagnaia, he had some pretty strong races, and we're going to Misano now. And last season for some reason, we had two races at Misano in 2 weeks. I don't remember why that was, but I remember he won the second one on the Sunday, brutally diving inside of Jorge Martin, who was in the lead. Yeah, it was like a really bold move. So he actually won that race. So it could be, if the KTM works at Misano, which is contrary to Barcelona, really, really grippy. I mean, we could be in for a treat there.
That's a great point, because Matt, we have seen the KTM work at the last 3 tracks we've been to.
Yeah, no, and like the Honda, only maybe even slightly better. Maybe this is just a run of tracks for them that put them ahead. You start to think about it, and you look at how they're really not that far off the pace now. Period. Certainly this weekend, and you just, in my mind, I'm like, oh, please let it come true that we're going to have Honda and KTM and Aprilia, which we have yet to discuss, with Yamaha just that little bit behind, but occasionally in the sprints causing utter chaos to mess with the Ducatis. And you just like, the mind boggles at the possibilities.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are the same, but when Alex had overtaken Mark Sunday in the race, and then suddenly Acosta and I think it was Quartararo were able to join them in the top 4, and then the other KTMs came, and the KTMs started battling each other a bit, and that really cost them time. And then Alex and Mark kind of pulled a gap, and I thought, this is such a shame, that they're kind of taking away time from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, I think that also hurt Acosta, because Acosta gambled on a soft rear tyre. And I think battling Bastianini, he probably cooked that rear tyre. And you're exactly right, Jules. I actually wrote in my notes, there was a bit of a race management phase where Alex was kind of controlling the place and the KTMs are there. And then they started squabbling. They said, no, don't do that. Just sit there and chill. And I think Acosta ripped his tyre, and it was on lap 14. He hit the cliff. And then Bastianini passed him, Matt, and then Acosta just fell away.
I think this is an interesting thing because average is average. Average pace, Bastianini was quicker. But because he relied on the soft tire to make up for his inability to nail the setup, Acosta had a momentary advantage for the first, 2/3 of the race about. And as a bike racer, I have done this because long, steep climbs were definitely never my friend even at my riding weight. So it was a tactic to get all the way to the front, be at the dead front at the start of the climb, and to just gradually ride backwards and hope that you were still in contact over the top. And this was Acosta's strategy. I think he knew that soft tire wasn't going to last, but he thought, if I get far enough ahead, I can hang on for a top 5, and that was his goal. And it worked beautifully.
It works, didn't it?
But it did deny us seeing what Bastianini might have done if they hadn't had to fight amongst themselves for Bastianini to get clear.
Yeah, I mean, Bastianini did fall about 5.5 seconds back in the end. It did look like he was going to close in and start challenging Mark at one point, but he too decided to fall off. So he hasn't quite found that prodigious late race pace on the KTM just yet. But Acosta still manages to come home fourth, which is really good. And you're exactly right. The uphill struggle that he did first actually got him over the top, and he could cruise down to the end. So talking about uphill struggles, of course, when you start a new pod and you start doing it, it's always a bit of an uphill struggle to get listeners. And we'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone who listens, downloads, who sends us in comments. We've been getting quite a good engagement, especially on the YouTubes. So how about you can help us on this uphill struggle by dropping the show a like, downloading it, maybe sharing it with some of your friends or your fellow MotoGP or two-wheel inclined friends as well. But you can also get in contact with us by sending us an email at mrapexmoto@gmail.com. That's mrapexmoto@gmail.com. We do try to reply to all of the emails you send in, and we also try to reply to all of the YouTube comments as well. So give the show a like, give the YouTube channel a subscribe. We ain't going anywhere just yet, but help us on the uphill struggle. And for those of you who come along with us and engage us, thank you very much. It is wonderful to have you on this uphill struggle, and hopefully we're going to have a downhill cruise to the end of the championship, and next year's championship surely is going to be amazing. So let's get on to our third topic, and well, Aprilia's anonymous. We all expected Aprilia to be the strongest package here. I was actually secretly predicting a Bezzecchi win. I'm glad I didn't say that too publicly. Jules, what went wrong?
It just almost seems they have built a too overall proper bike. You know, we were used to Aprilia being sometimes like, amazing. Like I remember at Portimao last season, or I think Kota as well, and then other tracks. You know, and this season they seem to be really steady in a lot of places ever since they started to develop the bike in season. But this track they just didn't have it. Jorge didn't really get on with it for the whole weekend. Baz was needed to get through Q2 or Q1, which he didn't manage. He was unfortunate, of course, in both races. It just didn't really work for him. And despite it was nice to see Trackhouse and Aprilia 4 in a row during the sprint, battling it out. But it wasn't battling, at the front or for anything meaningful. So it just seemed that they didn't really manage the low grip situation, and a bit unfortunate. I think it's a bit exaggerated by Baz having 2 DNFs, and like I said in the beginning, I expected a bit more from Jorge, but it's still a bit of a question mark, I guess, what he can do on this bike. So Yeah, I think this just wasn't the track for them this season, and I think also expectation might have been a bit how do you say this
Inflated, high.
yeah, inflated, because they used to be pretty good here with Aleix Espargaro. But I think he was just a really good rider for that track, and not necessarily on a bike that was very good at this track.
And Jules makes many good points that I was going to make. So thank you once again. I'm already reading your Rider of the Weekend, and I'm taking all three of them.
Revenge, Matt.
All three of them, they're done. They're mine now. I own them. No, what's to say they didn't have the best package? They didn't optimize it very clearly. And how do we know? Because it remind me where Bezzecchi finished in the sprint again. Oh, right. Yeah, gravel. And remind me where he finished in a Grand Prix again. Oh, yeah, right. Gravel. Okay. We don't know how they would have done because what did he turn in races? 2.5 laps? And he's by far and away their most accomplished rider on this bike. So we don't really know the full potential of it. However, I will bring up someone that we should talk about and that Jules mentioned, which is Ayagura, who qualified 8th after, and I had a soft spot for him when he came in. Because Aldeguer got all the love on the Ducati. And I was like, oh, yeah, that eye guy, man. He's like, and then he had the bad crash, and he was just anonymous in qualifying. 16th, 17th. And he would make progress. He would have some good racy moments. He would move up into the lower points, and you'd be like, okay. And suddenly, here he is. He's back. And he's not on the factory bike. And he finished 6th in the race, making some proper overtakes at the end, because he said he got overtaken, but he was managing tires, had a great qualifying, and he is the rookie on the non-factory bike, and he finished 6th in the Grand Prix. Well, Bezzecchi, I mean, come on, where did he start exactly? He didn't have a great start, but he started 4th, right? And so, yeah, I'd say it's an open question how Aprilia would actually have done if Bezzecchi had managed to stay on the bike, which not his fault.
Yeah, that's a good point, but I think we all expect it to be better. This has all of the hallmarks and the traits for this bike to be almost dominant here, Matt. They've got the best aero, got lots of fast corners. Jules mentioned quite rightfully so, this has been Aleix Espargaro's he's won the sprint here and won the Grand Prix here, I believe. He was on the podium. He won the sprint last year, actually, didn't he, on the bike when he was going to retire? Very emotional. So amazing. So yeah, a bit damp from them, really.
It is. And I think I can shed some light on why, because Jorge gave a really great interview about adapting to this bike from the Ducati, which he said, essentially the Ducati, you just rode it insanely aggressively to make it work. And what he's saying is that they're amazingly good on the braking, the initial braking phase. He says, but unlike the Ducati, you have to really manage the brake release. You can't just let it go. And he says the real problem is, as Jules noted, traction at the rear. They really, really like to spin the rear wheel up, and it takes a very silky smooth control of the throttle to keep that from happening. And that's something he says he's still very much adapting to. So I think that explains his qualifying. Absolutely, because if you spin the rear even a little bit before you head down a long straight, you're losing time the whole way. But in a race, you're not quite going that fast, so you don't have that same loss. So there's hope there. But at a track that is both high degradation and low traction, if you don't have good grip at the rear, you're fighting a bit of a defensive battle. And his is to learn to carry more corner speed, so he's less reliant on that fearsome acceleration.
And maximize the ultimate one lap potential on the soft tyres, which he still can't do yet. That's a very good point about if you're spinning up, you can't do that. Talking about maximising results, let's move on a bit from Aprilia and get onto our honourable mention section at the end, which is good. And we've mentioned it before, but Fabio Quartararo, talk about maximising your results. Absolutely amazing from him. He stunning, obviously, second in the sprint. He fell to fifth in the main Grand Prix, but to hang on to fifth, I think, even amongst that company, amongst the very fast the very fast KTMs and the Ducatis, was absolutely amazing. And yeah, as we said before, he is hopefully finished up his day successfully. I haven't seen any reports yet, Jules, about his V4 today, but that was pretty much a maximised result of the weekend, and he stayed on the bike as well, which is good. He's pushing hard but staying on.
Absolutely maximized, and I think it came just at the right time, especially for Yamaha. I mean, you feel they are having to do everything to keep Fabio in a good place mentally. I sometimes think, imagine entering MotoGP, being competitive, second year, you win the world title, and he was how old? He wasn't 21 maybe.
Yeah, he was very young. Yeah, 21, 22, I think.
And he as well must have thought like, okay, let's go. I'm gonna be the king of this sport in the coming seasons, and then it never happens again, and not even close. Yeah, okay. The second after that, when Pecco won his first, he was more or less, in the fight. But I mean, it must be so hard mentally, and then season after season experiencing a bike that's just a dog of a bike sometimes. So it came at the exact right time, I think. And I think they kind of rushed in the V4 test for him as well, to show him like, yeah, well, see, we're trying. And again, let's just hope they nail this.
Absolutely, that's the thing they were trying to do. I think you picked up on a great point there of they're doing everything to try and keep him because it was contract time and he was getting very frustrated, and he got on the bike round about the decline, the great Japanese manufacturer decline of what it was like, the Japanese depression in there, where they just fell behind. They just got caught with the trousers around their ankles, basically. The European manufacturers just took this ginormous leap, led by Ducati, forward. And yes, typically the Japanese manufacturers always like to do their own thing and go their own way, particularly like Honda and Yamaha like to very much do their own thing. And they've had to sort of go back on that now and go, right, we need to start copying and going in this direction. He got caught up, and yeah, they've rushed in the V4, I think, essentially to keep Quattravario, purely to do that. And let's think, this is going to be basically a one-season engine, because the rules change in 2027 as well. They can build on the architecture of it, but still, this is a massive amount of investment to see. So, talking about the Japanese decline, Matt, Honda, you've mentioned them already, were well, again, really good this weekend. Marini, really strong.
Marini, Zarco till he fell off in a Grand Prix. And all the Honda riders. I think the only Honda rider who might have disappointed was it Rins that finally fell off the bike for the first time. Or am I thinking a different team?
No, not Rins. Espargaro was not great. He's coming in as a test rider. Mir actually stayed on for once, which is it wasn't harpooned or crashed, but he was down in 12th. But Marini was the top Honda, behind Zarco, when he stayed on in 8th.
Yeah, and the thing to me that was nice about it is it was just confirmation. Hungary was a single point of data, but now they've come to a completely different track and still had performance. And not just had performance, but you don't hear any of the riders, except for the ones that don't have all the new toys, grumbling. And that, I think, is a really good sign for Honda. They are developing a rider-friendly chassis and swing arm that gives their riders confidence and gives them margin even when they're at the limit of traction. And even if you don't have the dead best bike, if your rider has 100% confidence, they're extracting everything. And sometimes 100% of 80% is better than 80% of 100%, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do. Very succinctly put and very, very nicely put there. So what is looking very nicely put is the championship then. We've been rambling on for far too long. We could talk all day about changes and chassis changes and how good it is Honda is in, but it's looking very good for Marc Marquez at the top of the championship with a 182-point lead. The championship's still alive. It's going to go on for another couple of races, but he has got a whopping lead over his brother, who looks pretty cemented in now for second place. Bagnaia, who we have to say Aprilia's and Bez disappeared. Was quite fortunate this weekend that Bez didn't score because he was rapidly closing in, but actually he's still got a 40-point lead over Bezecchi. And then there's a great little battle for fourth and third. It still might come in at the end of the season I think the hot topic is who's going to get third in the championship. I think that's the real fight there. So, as always, we like to end on some awards. Jules, I know I can see Matt sitting there sniping. I'm going to go to you first. I'm going to let you get in before Matt can snipe.
There's enough.
Who was your rider of the weekend?
Yeah, there's enough to pick from. But let me go for Fabio, as he as I just said, he must be crawling from a dark place almost every weekend, trying to get his head in the right space again, and he from nowhere and on mediocre machinery to secure a podium on the Sunday. Really impressive.
Nice one, Matt.
Before I get to mine, I just want to throw in, like, you think about it, he's on the third or fourth bike, and yet somehow everyone identifies him as, if you put him on the same bike as Mark, that's a championship going down to the absolute wire. So I don't know what he has found this season, but he's been very clearly the competitor in a lot of ways. So just very well chosen. However, who I'm going to choose, because I already talked nice about this is not as easy as you think it is, because there's probably at least 3 or 4 more riders to choose from, and there's only 2 of us. But I gotta throw Ogura out there. He absolutely saved Aprilia's bacon this weekend, and he's been just lost after his crash. Great to see him come back as a rookie. Great to see him just take it all on his shoulders and go like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Just finish 6th. That's all.
That's a great point. I'm really happy you chose him. And talk about coming back. Yeah, so he was doing really well. He got bitten by a couple of nasty injuries and big crashes, and then lost his confidence, but he's absolutely back now. So my one, no one's taken it. It's left me a wide open goal and a wide open door. I've got to give it to Alex Marquez. Amazing. For once, he's not the bridesmaid. He's now the bride. It's all about Alex. Amazing. So we'll move on to moment of the weekend. I'm not going to let Matt snipe again, Jules.
So I was okay. I'm not going to say what I was originally thinking of. I'm going to pick what. I don't know if you guys remember on a Sunday when Ogura tried to overtake Bagnaia for the first time at the end of the straight going into turn 1, and Bagnaia defended heavily and with a lot of muscle, and he threw the bike sideways, and he let that rear tire snap back in line again while starting to lean into the corner. That was a sign for me that he was at least more confident in defending and in entering that corner than we have seen for months, I thought. So if it doesn't carry on to Misano, I'll take this moment to see some of the old Pecco back.
Great point. I like that, because that was out of control. Matt, what was your moment of the weekend?
Well, speaking of out of control, I actually have 2. So I'm gonna circle back for the second one if you don't pick it. However, for me, it's got to be the Bastianini pass on Acosta, the stoppy pass, I call it, because you watched it in slow motion. I'm like, oh, his rear wheel is like 3 feet into the air, and somehow he turns the whole bike on the front wheel and just neatly drifts into the corner like, oh yeah, no, it's just how you go around corners.
Yeah, that was good.
Unbelievable.
That was absolutely, stunning. I almost forgot about, the slow-mo was just incredible. It's like, no way. And you can't use the back brake or the engine braking if the rear wheel is in the air. So you lose a bit of braking as well. And it's almost similar to the Bagnaia one. Bagnaia was also rear wheel in the air, a bit out of control on his move that Jules said. So my moment of the weekend, and I'll let you circle back for your second one. We'll allow you a second one. My moment, it's got to be, this is going to sound a bit wafty, and people probably aren't going to like it, but it's the brotherly loving. It was the 2 Marquez brothers celebrating in front of their stand. Jules looks disgusted. what an amazing feeling of like the two brothers doing it. And it was just how genuinely happy Mark seemed for Alex as well. Just like, if you're going to be beaten, you might as well be your brother. And it was in front of their stands. The party they must have had that night must have been absolutely amazing. Just that, like, you know, I'm really close to my brother. That's warm, fuzzy feeling territory for me, and I absolutely like that. Matt, what was your second one?
It actually plays up on yours a little bit. It was the Alex salute to turn 10.
Ah, yes. The rolling through the gravel. I love it. Yeah, just absolutely brilliant. That was absolutely spot on. What would be spot on if you could go and follow my panel? So, Jules, where can people get you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, and the handle is Jules on Racing.
Matt, where can people get you?
At MattPT55 on pretty much all your socials.
Awesome. We'll be back again in 1 week. Well, I say will. You'll be led by the very capable Jules, because I will be, as previously mentioned, I will be in Catalonia myself. So, but it is the San Marino Grand Prix next weekend, and there's no championship match point. But as always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.